Hey guys, welcome to this video. Slightly off piece, shall we say? This one although it's something which accompanies another video I've done regarding Radius. It's strictly not about MikroTik today. This is about installing FreeRADIUS, so our Radius server, including the MySQL database on an Ubuntu server. Now, the reason for that is I did a video, I've done a couple of videos now, one for Hotspot, advanced Hotspot configurations, where we use a Radius server as our authentication method. So instead of saving those username and passwords on the MikroTik itself, and also a PPPoE one, where likewise we did a similar thing. And for both of those, I used this Radius server, including the database. So I thought I would go show you how to set that up, because I struggled to find a complete guide that did it all. The idea was I'd set the other videos up and then I'll just point you into the direction. But we'll get into it. And effectively what we're going to do is we're going to go through these steps here. So this is my my website, and this is an article which I've put together. It just has the steps of what we're going to do today, so you don't have to try and, because obviously if you're following a video, it kind of helps to have where you can copy and paste them from. And I've basically cut it down to exactly what it is that we need. There are some additional things that could be done and explained, but this is the very basics of what we want. So we go ahead and basically just do the upgrade. First of all, I'm using an Ubuntu server which is completely fresh install, nothing on there. So we're going to go ahead and install the Apache, then the PHP, then the database. I'm using MySQL. You can use MariaDB if that's your preference. I've always just used MySQL, and I don't really have a reason not to use it. I'm sure there's people out there that would. Although I use Linux a lot and I like it. It's not my bread and butter. I'm predominantly networking, so it just complements some of the things that I do. So I have some knowledge of it. Following the steps here, we'll then install the FreeRADIUS. Configure the database that's used for the Radius, about what we need to change in the file. The guide will need some fleshing out, which I will do at some point to explain what it is I'm showing you right now. But hopefully this is just so you can follow along with the video. And then we're going to use PHPMyAdmin, which, if you're not familiar, is just a front end to manage that database, to save having to do it all from the CLI. And we'll use we'll create a test user, and then we'll use this utility which is called ntradping, which is a radius testing. And that all I'll do is then just confirm that I can successfully connect to my Radius server with credentials. So let's start off. As I mentioned, it's an Ubuntu server. It's nothing on it. It's version, tell me here, 22, I think it was 22.042. So the long-term support version. It's running on a VMware instance, but that shouldn't have any bearing on what we're doing. If I perhaps just put these side by side, and then we can follow it like that. Okay, so as I mentioned, there's nothing on here. This is brand new installed, rebooted, and then here we go. I'm going to start by doing the update. First time we're going to have to add as I mentioned before, this isn't, I don't normally do videos about Linux specifically, so I would probably be giving you more detail about what I'm doing if this was a video about MikroTik specifically. So if you need, there's hundreds of better people out there that can tell you about the Linux side, but I just thought this is exactly what I wanted to show you, so this is why I'm doing it now. We won't bother with the upgrade because we just want to update those repositories. Install Apache 2, which is the web server, which will give us our web front end. The -y just means that it's, because normally if I did it without the -y, it would ask me if I want to proceed. So this just skips that bit by saying yes. Let that install. It's pretty quick. The next one is the PHP, and it's just a whole bunch of various libraries. And just by specifying PHP, it's going to install the latest version. But you can, if you need a specific version, you can do that as well. But again, we won't go into too much detail about that now. Okay, now we can do that. Just copy and paste that. And then we'll do our MySQL database. Okay, that one's done. Now we go ahead and do the MySQL. Okay, very good. Now we're going to configure our database. So we just use this. By the way, if you're not familiar, this sudo is so in the world of permissions, you have root, which is your ultimate. So if you're a Windows user, it's like your administrator, and then you have your individual users. But sometimes, if you need elevated privileges, if your account is a sudo user, a super user, you just apply that at the beginning. Which is when I first did it, it asked me for a password, which was my local password, and then after that, after a period of time, it will ask me again if I try and do something later on. So yeah, just make sure you have the sudo at the beginning of everything. This installation process is just going to configure my database for me. The first bit is this validate password component. I'm just going to select no for this because it's just a way it can means that you can specify how strict you want your passwords to be. But we don't really want to go into that now, and it does mean that we'll be connecting to MySQL using a blank password to begin with. But again, like I said, this isn't a tutorial necessarily about how to configure MySQL properly. This is just what we really need to get going. We're going to assume that this server will be on your own private network for only use for your on your management network or something for your MikroTik to connect to. So not obviously going to be publicly facing this. So yeah, remove anonymous users. Click go Y for yes. I want to disallow that root login. So that means that you can't log into it externally with root. What was next by default? Remove test database. Yes. And then reload privileges. Yes. And then all done. So that's that done. Right, now we're going to install the FreeRADIUS. Okay, we'll just copy and paste this. The reason I'm using Ubuntu is just, it's free, it's open source, has a good community behind it, and then, it's a lot of support out there for it. So if you are looking to do stuff like this, you can pretty much find the answers from many forums out there. So whether you're, practiced user or a professional. So now once we've installed that, what we're going to do is we're going to stop the service because by default it started. So now that's stopped. If you want to know how to check the status, you just change that word stop to status. As you can see, it's inactive, so it's not running. Control C will get you out of that. Now what we're going to do is we're going to run this. I've missed it out. Okay, my bad. So it's sudo FreeRADIUS -x. There we go. I'll add that back into here before I put it live. Yeah, so now what this tells us is it's like a verbose output of FreeRADIUS. Basically, it goes into all the different types of config we've got set up already. And providing yours is set up properly, you will get effectively these lines at the end, which tells you that it's listening on these two ports, which are the default for authentication and accounting for Radius. Yeah, we don't worry about proxy, and the address is just our internal for our authentication if we were tunneling, but we're not. So yeah, but basically when it says ready to process requests. So basically at the end you'll have these lines at the end, and the ones we want to worry about is basically this ready to process requests and the fact that we're using the default ports, so 1812 and 1813. So we can just Control C to cancel that. That just confirms that it's up and running, or will be up and running. It's currently turned off. So now we want to sort out our database. So this is basically going to connect to MySQL database through the CLI. But as I mentioned before, the password validation thing, we skipped that bit, so we're not going to have a password here. So where it says enter password, just click enter, and it jumps you into MySQL. This is basically, we're going to create a new database called Radius. We're going to create a user called Radius, and this is the password that the user is going to read. Now this is the user that you administrate the database with. So this isn't what you give the MikroTik, so this will be something different. But the things to note is the name of the database is important, because we need to specify that or change that later. I always use Radius because it's there's less to change later on, and the user, can be anything you like. So this is the password I use in a lot of my demos. You'll notice it's highly insecure. I would never recommend to use it really, but I just do it for my demo purposes. So if you want to change these, copy and paste them into a text file, a notepad or something, and then change them as you want. So you basically want to change the if it's a different user, change the user here and the user here and the user here. Sorry, no, that's the database, and then that's the user. Okay. Yeah, so user and user, where it's got @localhost as your user, and the database name is there and there, or just leave it as it is, and then just obviously choose a nice secure password. Okay, quit. So it's goodbye when you've left. Okay. Now the next bit, we're going to import the this SQL database. This is basically an SQL dump we want to import into that newly created database. Sorry, we're going to import all those tables into it. So what we're going to do is we're going to become root to do this. So this is a command basically. SU means turn yourself to super user, which is root, but by using the sudo as you don't need to know the root password, if that makes sense. So you don't always, often on a fresh install of Linux, you create a user, but you don't have a root password. And there's various reasons for that. You don't want the root. You don't want to ever log into your device with root. And you basically want to mimic root using your own password, providing your own user, providing you're a super user, which by default you will be if this is the only account on there. But again, I won't go into too much detail there. Just basically, when you do this, make sure there's a space between the SU and the minus sign. And now, as you can see, it's changed my user to root there. Okay, let's copy that. Okay. Hit enter again. So this would be my SQL. Remember when I did it before, up here in the password. It's basically done the same again, but it's also applying this command afterwards. So again, I just hit enter to that. Didn't type anything in. If you have set a password at some point as your MikroTik root, your MySQL root, then you'd have to put that in there. We're going to create this this link between these two folders, and then we're going to edit the SQL file for the FreeRADIUS. Okay, basically going to tell FreeRADIUS to use SQL. There's a bit to do in here. Basically going to change. Going to find these bits and then swap them out. So where there's this is what it. Like I said, I'm going to put some text around this to explain what we're doing. So we're going to change it from this to this. So we want to find this driver equals and change it from SQL null to be this SQL dialect. So to do that, we, as you can see, it's right there. So we're okay now. But this is nano. This is a text editor nano. To find stuff, you do Control and W, and then here we can type sorry, dialect. I just mentioned that, didn't I? Said it was there, but it's not actually, because that's the next bit we're going to do. So we're going to do driver first. So this is relevant. So we search for driver, enter. So it finds it again. So we do Control W again, and then as you can see, it's already got that from before, so we don't have to type it in again. We just hit enter, and it'll move on to the next one. So obviously that's going to take us through every time that we find the word driver. So we do that again. This time, if we type, it's going to replace what we just searched. So if we type for something more specific, no. Okay, we'll try that again. There we go. See, there it is. So that's what it looks like now, and we're going to change it to this. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to put this hash symbol in front of the line we don't want, which basically negates that line, comments it out, and then we're going to take it away from that one. Okay, so now it looks like that. Okay, now we'll search for, so Control W, we're going to search for dialect. Search for something a bit more. So we want to basically go back to the top of the page where we were. SQLite. There we go. So we're up there now. So we want to change this SQLite to MySQL. Okay. Now, next bit we're going to do is this MySQL TLS. So we can just scroll down for that because that's just not too far. I mean, you can, instead of searching for stuff, you can just scroll up and down just using your arrows. Basically, we want to take out all this TLS stuff because we're not using the TLS certificates. And we're just going to, as you can see, look here, comment everything out apart from this warnings auto at the bottom. So we basically take it out. You have to take everything out because if you don't, it will throw an error. If there's one line randomly that is out of place, that it doesn't understand why it's there. Okay, so it's got everything in there apart from warnings auto. Okay, now the last bit is to do with the radius, the SQL server. So we can just scroll down. There it is, connection info. Right, we want to uncomment all of these 4 lines. Okay, now this is where server we can do localhost, that's fine, same port. But the login, this is where we set our user of our database in this section here. So whatever we specified as our user and our password is what we're now going to put in here. So as I said, I kept this as radius. It's only the password that we're going to change to that ultra secure hello world 123. Okay, that's spelled correctly. Good. Okay, back to where we were. Okay, so we've done that. Our next bit is regarding the database name. So we find, here we go. So Redis. So this doesn't need changing in my account because I'm using that default. I'm using a database called Radius, but as I mentioned, if you're calling it, if you've got a specific database just for this and you want to give it a different name, or it's for, you've got multiple different clients, you want an individual database for. Not sure how that would work actually, but anyway, you would change that name here. Okay, so that just has to match what you set before, but as I mentioned, we're not doing that, so we keep that the same. And then we just scroll down to when we find this read clients, which will be those read groups, read profiles, pool, and read clients. There we go. So you just want to uncomment that. Make sure that says now yes, and then this client table NAS, This is the table within that database we've imported, which has the name of our devices that are going to make the radius requests, i.e. our MikroTik. So by default it's called NAS. If we for some reason want to change that, we have to make sure we change it here. Okay, but again, we're leaving that as default. If you're doing the same, you can just ignore it. Okay, so so we do Control X once we've finished, and then hit Y, yes, and then enter to write as that file name, and we're done. Last thing is to just change some permissions. We'll do 2 lines at once and enter. And now we want to restart that service. Cool. So it's still possibly hasn't started yet. Sudo service FreeRADIUS status. Oh, so it is running. We're going to stop that before we actually attempt to make any, and I'll show you for why later. But next thing to do, final thing really with the configuration, is this PHPMyAdmin. It's just a nice front end to manage your database. A bit more graphical. There's a few other options it's going to ask you along the way, which I've kind of done screenshots for here. So we're using Apache 2, so we just need to hit, see that red is just for which one's selected. So we just have to hit the space bar and it'll put an asterisk in there, a star, and then you hit tab to take you to the OK one. So your red basically is what you're selecting, and then just hit enter. And it's going to ask you to configure a default PHPMyAdmin database for its various its own configuration parameters. So we just click yes for that, and then we just need to pick a password for this. So this can just be anything. Okay. Once that's done, it'll tell you at the end. Yep, we're all done. So we can go to the IP address of this, which is, see what this is. There we go. Copy that. Now we put it in our GUI, in our web browser, sorry. We just do /PHP MyAdmin. There we go. So we're going to log in using that Radius account we created on the database. That's where this comes in for use. And that hello world 123 password. Okay. So we can probably expand this now while we configure this. So here we have, expand this one here. This is our tables which are used for our Radius authentication. We have this NAS that I mentioned earlier, and this is going to be where we configure the servers or the clients, sorry, the Radius clients that are going to make the Radius request. So it's not the user itself that's connecting, it's the device that you're connecting to. So if you're using it for your Wi-Fi, it'll be either the access point or more likely the controller. If you're using it for PPPoE, it will be your PPPoE server, so you only configure this once. If you've ever used Meraki access points, because they're a cloud-based managed device, actually the Radius request is made from the access point itself, so you would need a whole bunch in here if you had lots of access points, or a particular range. But in our example that I showed you in my other videos, we're just using the single one. Your rad check is where we put our users in. So if you're a Wi-Fi user, this is where they would go. And then we have this rad reply, which is basically parameters that we send back once we're authenticated, and that will things like VLAN ID or profile to set your speeds. And again, that's covered in the other videos. So for my test today, I'm just going to use this application, which I'll show you in a minute, but we're going to be doing it from this machine here. So we first start with NAS and we add insert. So the key things here is NAS name. This can only be a name if it's a resolvable DNS entry. The IP of my PC that I'm on here is that. So that's what my name has to be, because that doesn't, I haven't got a host name configured for that, if that makes sense. The short name here can be something something more, descriptive. But yeah, just bear in mind, don't get those mixed up. Leave the server blank. This just comes in by default. Secret here is what we're going to give it. So again, I'm going to use my nice secure 123, and this is what you would configure in the MikroTik under the radius section. Okay, there you go. Okay, it just gives you it's already inserted, but this is basically the SQL command. If you wanted to copy and paste that and do lots of them, just hit browse, and then we can see it's installed there. Another red check is where I'm going to put my user. So again, username is going to be test1. Attribute is going to be, it's a clear text password. The operator is going to be colon equals, and the value is going to be a password, which is going to be, again, 1, 2, 3. Let's do 4, just to make it different. Okay, and then you can add more of these if you wanted to. Okay, so that because it's SQL, you can do all sorts of things with it, in scripting or coding wise. You could have a different dashboard front end that sends the you can configure them somewhere else and it will just send them to you. You could integrate it with some sort of point of sales or booking system or something like that. So in a hotel, client checks in, they automatically get generated a username and password to use on your hotspot, and then you can just hand them that and it will have already sent the SQL command to your server. That's why it's very customizable, so with a bit of know-how. Okay, so we've got our Radius client and our user configured, so now we can test. We're going to use this, so it's called NT-RADPing. Doesn't seem to have an actual website that I found, so the best one that I've found to download was this open text community, and then down here it had the zip file. So I'll put a link to this site, but I can't guarantee that this site is always going to be up, but I would just Google that. Google what it is and you'll find it. It's very lightweight, just a little application. Okay. Just extract everything. Okay, and there it is. It's just an application that runs. So just click on that and it opens it. Okay, so we put in the IP address of our server, which is this one here. Another thing to mention, which I've touched on in my other videos, is you have to be able to route to this without any sort of natting or anything in the way, because you're specifying where under NAS, you're specifying where your requests are going to come from. You need to actually have that IP address in there. So if you're natting or your IP address is changing by the time it hits the server, then it's not going to accept it. Okay, just a word of warning. Easy way to check that is if you're on your Linux machine, you SSH into it from your MikroTik itself, and then you can look in the, let's see if I can remember now, var log. Log it's actually cat var log auth log, is it? In here. There we go. Yeah, so when I first logged into it, it's accepted the password for the user master from that IP. Okay, so handy little tip where I use cat. Cat is just basically outputs the entire file. If I do tail -f, and that'll basically send the tail as the end of the file. And now let's do a demo, shall we? So this I'll do it from this MikroTik here, which is actually on 0.6. So now if I do new terminal, I haven't planned this bit, so this might not work, but I hope so. System SSH, user is master, the address is 10.200.22.252, wasn't it? Okay. No, that's wrong password then. There we go. Things is a failed password. Okay, I mistyped it. But either way, we got the output we wanted because look, it tells us the IP address that I've logged in with. Okay, and then just Control C to stop that. So yeah, tail -f is your friend when dealing with log files and live stuff. Okay. Anyway, got off a bit sidetracked there. Close him. So yeah, I've from past experience, I've tried to, work out why I can't get any response. I realised that somehow my traffic was natted along the way, and it just gives you a nice validation. So back to this. So we're using our radius secret, which is what we configured for this one, and then we're going to test the username, which is going to be that test1, and it was hello world 1 2 3 4 this time. Chap just means it sends it sort of encrypted, if you can call chap encryption, and then send. So that's failing because remember, did I start it? I can't remember if I actually started it again. Oh, it's running. Interesting. Got the right IP, 252. Oh, hang on, look. Port's wrong. Remember what I said before, where it says it's listening on. What happened here? Okay. Yeah, so that's yeah, we're using 1812 for ours. If I just do. What I was going to show you is I was going to stop the FreeRADIUS server. Service FreeRADIUS stop. And what I was going to do is I was going to run it in the foreground. So basically get rid of the service. Remember I did that when I first installed it, just to confirm it's working. -X. There we are. So it's listening on that port. And we had it set to 1645 by default, okay? So if we send again, there we go, access accept. So it sent back that response. And then it basically will show us all the, it will write it to a log table, show that I use that password, which is clear text. So this is what's happened. This is what the server sees, because this is what the server's got configured. Yeah, and it should tell us where it's come from. So it's received from .10. Username test. See, there's the password it's been sent, which has been chap in quotes, encrypted, hidden, if you like. So yeah, and then we cancel that. So now I stop that. If I try it again, it's going to fail, because what we want to actually do is sudo service start. Okay, and that started. It hasn't given me any errors, but it's always nice just to check that it's actually active running. And I'll extend that again. There we go, accepted. Okay. So that's pretty much it. Now you're ready to go and use that for your radius deployments in whatever it might be. But yeah, do check out those other videos I've done on different ways to authenticate using Radius. It's it takes that, the configuration of your users outside of your MikroTik, so it can interact them with other programs or whatever's happening. So yeah, I would recommend using it this way. And yeah, like I said, Ubuntu is free. It can run on anything. I've got this on a VM, but it doesn't have to be. It can be on a PC. It can be on a dedicated server, whatever you like. You can run this on Raspberry Pis. Works pretty well. Very similar setup. I haven't done it for a Pi. I've just done it for Ubuntu because that's my preference. But yeah, no reason not to. So yeah, any comments, please leave them below. Again, I'm not a Ubuntu guy. I'm not a Linux guy as my specialty. So I don't. I probably haven't explained things well enough in that respect. But this is exactly how I set it up when I use it. So I thought I'd just show that. And I've very much done it from using it with the MikroTik is the reason. So, but yeah, thanks for watching. Comments, any ideas for videos you got, check out my website if you've got any other. All my other tutorials are on there. I try and keep as many as when I can have a video and a tutorial side by side, so you can follow both. But yeah, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks.